Welcome back to another Ultimate Beginner's Handbook video. Today, we finally get to talk about team building here. Now, why we wanted to do the who to pull for first was we wanted to make sure that you understood the processes of pulling a unit, kind of what you want to look for, how you want to look for it. And now today, we're going to teach you about building teams, because a lot of times we get asked, especially on Discord, YouTube comments, people ask, what team should I use? Well, and this is where it gets subjective, so that's why we're going to teach you today about building teams in a couple different ways, and this should give you a better understanding of how to go about in building, to build teams for content, because it's a little more simple than you think it is, and it's a little more complex than you think it is. All right, so let's jump over to the main account, and we'll explain this because it's hard to just do this without showing you. So first off, let's just go ahead and get the absolute new player question out of the way, which is, what's my main team? Whatever you summoned for. All right, let's just kind of start there, because that is going to be realistically what you have to use. It's not about getting X unit, it's about getting to the first steps. So that's going to depend on your reroll. Who did you get along the way? Was there any specific festival unit at the time? What was around when you pulled? Did you pull just generic units? So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a few different teams and why, and then we'll jump in to the more specifics of why we're doing this, and about how to actually compilate your own teams. So let's assume you have a garbage reroll completely, and you're really going off of what's on banner and given to you free in game. All right, so your first team is, what am I going to play with? Well, since your first step is Chimera, basically you're going to want to come in and grab your Chimera units, which is going to be air. You'll have to unlock. You're going to need, actually, let's just go raw fire for this for a moment. Tio is a 2-star unit. She's the best 2-star healer in the game. Very easy to get a hold of. And has a lot of great stuff in her kit. You'll use her a lot if you do not have her. Eternal, you'll unlock for free as well. So you'll want to go for this. And then you're going to need a crit buffer because you're not going to have gear at the time. So crit chance. So this would be your, absolute day one starter team if you'd ended up with nothing, okay? Which, if you ended up with nothing, this is a really weird start, and you probably want to try it again, okay? But this is I can play the game right now with this. Here's why. You have healer cleansing ability here. Once you get her completely leveled up, she's got a lot of really great stuff in her kit. She'll want to go first because this is the crit, she is the crit buffer for your team. She's also got a situational dual attack, so not super great on the return on investment there, but also she has the ability to mark stuff with a necklace that you'll get later. Up there is Eternal, which is one of the best debuffers in the game. Defense break, speed down, all the good stuff that you're going to want to get started with later on. She can steal buffs and all sorts of crazy tech. But a really good unit just to go ahead and have on your team. Plus she can do okay damage built on a debuffing set, so it's worth having on your team. Plus, the defense break equals air. Your main DPS carry is going to get to do 99% of the damage. Now, single target, not really great if you're trying to do AoE clearing, but in the situation of you've got nothing, all right, we're trying to help you out first, okay? Now, here's hopefully the better role for you, depending on what you're doing. If you don't really want to deal with the defense break tech, or you don't... Actually, let's start it with this way. Let's assume you're not worried about dying, because that's probably the best case scenario here. You're not worried about dying, so where do you go as a free-to-play player? There's actually a couple good options, and they're both actually grass. Noah is my favorite by far. You'll just turn her skills off, and you'll only level up her skill 1. And there you go. Instant and damage there. She'll do a single target attack into an AoE attack. So I really like Noah as a free starter unit. Again, this is a unit you can unlock. Now, if you did do the summons and you picked Ame, this is an Ame costume. So if you're wondering why these characters look different than yours, Eternal's in a costume and Ame's in a costume. My Valentine is currently not in a costume because we're going old school right now. So kind of weird that my Valentine's not normally in a costume. So rare, unique thing. But yes, Ame here has a bunch of AoE in her kit. A great grass unit to use as well. And then running single target AoE is good. You'll clear a bunch of content being able to do this. This will work really well for you. Another good one is for if you happen to not get Ame and you ended up with Ren, again, costume for her. You could also use this, and you could use really any combination. You could even remove air, but I like, if I'm going to be as a new player starting, I want a single target and a AoE in the beginning, personally. If I don't have a lot of premium units, because this allows you to do really good boss damage, and this allows you to clear the trash pretty quick. So I like having the option of both. Plus, there are times where bosses have AoE and stuff like that. So it allows you to go in and do this. So I've got this for AoE, and this also has some single target in it, but it's mainly for the AoE in the beginning. This is pure single target, plus I can remove buffs if I absolutely need to. I've got my defense break there, and I've got my starting buffer here. Now, why this over Scotty? Because this is normally a question we see is, why Valentine over Scotty? You want to take maximum elemental advantage into the fight, because that helps all of your chain burst and all this stuff. There's an advantage to taking this in, so leveling up more of one type of unit into that is better than not. Where we talk about Monad Ava, like in the special request guide, where we talk about using Monad Ava as one of the best part of the teams, it's because you've got 3 fire heroes already in there, so I'm not wanting to split it by 2 and 2. I'd rather go 3 and 1 or all 4 if I can. So that's why I'm not normally recommending for just general, because you're trying to level up one set of units right in the beginning. And again, we're talking to the brand new starting player right now. Completely brand new, doesn't really have a good account. We're going off the bare necessities, all right? So this is something that you would want to look for in building a team brand new day one. Okay, now let's give you a couple other options, because there is some what ifs to be going out there, okay? So let's look at this from a scenario of I need to tank a little bit more. You know, there are some fights as a new player, you can't just completely steamroll it, so you do need some tank up. All right, well, you're given Veronica very early on, again, costume for her. So you will want her, and you also will always want to make sure you put Veronica in this slot right here. Always, okay? So this is tanking up, all right? So now you have to make a decision. Do I need crit? Do I need heals? Again, we're going to say if you are a, bad luck early starter, don't have a lot of rerolls, I would recommend this is going to give you your heal and your tank really well. Now, the next 2 slots are situational. If you are running off the bare bones of your reroll, we'll probably put Ame here. So now you have your AoE damage dealer. And now this slot really comes down to what's on your account and what do you have. But again, very easy to get early on. We'll go ahead and say, pop air in here. Now you're going to be having to deal with something here of crit or not crit. Do you need the crit or do you not need the crit? If you're not worried about critting and it's just surviving through it, you can run those. But if you are worried about critting and it's probably better for you as a player to carry something that's going to give you the crit, which is 50% right here on the buff, and 50% crit damage. So now it'll be a little slower, but now you have a taunt and a dual attacker on this eventually with her burn. You've got heals right here and a cleanse, which is good because you want to be able to get those nasty debuffs off of you. You've got a situational dual attacker up here, crit chance, crit damage buffer, and then you've got a damage dealer here. And again, you can roll really any AoE unit here. Again, I would probably aim for, something like this, Ame, it kind of just depends on where you're at. But you can tank up this way, okay? And this will give you a good bit because her defense barrier is really good for you if you're getting, like, hammered early on. But this was a team we used very early on to beat most content if it was too tough, because the defense buff is great. Her heals, while single target on the main heal, is still really, really powerful, and you can bring somebody back from the brink of death with this thing. So it's really good. You're most likely to die is going to be Valentine. Rangers are very lean when it comes to that, so do keep this in mind. And then obviously damage dealer is prone to dying as well. But like I said, with the way this is set up, you should be in a pretty good state to work on that. Now, obviously, the chain skill is an absolute mess. We've got 3 finishers, 1 companion, so, I mean, it doesn't really matter here. I do recommend if you are in really dangerous territory, you're, like, really losing, make sure Veronica is the last in your chain for this case, due to the fact that's going to give you that defense buff when you hit that chain, which is part of her tech as well. But do note that you will have to read. There's a lot of stuff in this game that cannot be taunted. But there's also a lot of crap in here that can be taunted. So it is a mixed bag of nuts. You will have to read. You can't just face tank everything. All right. So new players. This is kind of what's just going to get you into the game. All right. Now let's assume you have a reroll. Okay. So reroll in this case is going to be one of a couple subjective things. One, how good are the events when you're rerolling? Is this after December 31st, 2025? It's November the 9th right now. There's just a little bit of time left before they're going to pull the 1,000 tickets and the 12,000 Aether. So you've got, basically a month left of this content before that's going to be gone. And your rerolls are going to get potentially a little worse for a while. That 12,000 Aether is really nice. The 1,000 tickets is really, really great. That allows you to basically pull probably 2/3 of the roster right now, as long as you don't try to duplicate anything. And having the roster is more important. All right. So you've done a reroll, and we're going to assume Monad Ava isn't available to easily pick, which automatically takes her off the list of the reroll. Personally, I see her value, but I would rather pull one of my damage dealers than the healer, because there are a lot of really great healers. I know there's going to be some people who are going to want Monad Ava because they think the damage dealers can be made up other places, but you've got a couple things that we really need to look at. So first and foremost, Demi Luna right here. Absolutely a monster DPS unit. You can reroll for her. She is the suggested, but there is still a part of me that is old school Demiurge Stella. There's just something about this and this unit that carried so much of the early game, mid game for me that Luna can't quite do. Luna's raw damage output, okay? So think about this. Do you want a unit that can just absolutely blister units? Yeah, that's a good idea. But there are many times where Luna will die off because she's not super tanky, and then you're screwed. Your big damage is gone. Where Stella comes in, she can typically keep you in the fight a lot longer due to that defense, that barrier that she adds right here. So this early burn barrier makes it really easy for you to cheese through fights. When you get down, especially to the 1v1 or 1v3 type stuff, where she's having to fight, several different things. And again, we're talking very niche fights that don't happen often, but we're thinking about it from the new player perspective of where you are. You're going to be in the situation where you're probably losing units a little bit more often than an in-game player, okay? So this advice goes a little further out. But overall, she can carry you through things that normally you shouldn't be carried through. So, plus the immune to stunned, frozen, petrified, priority decrease, all that stuff does help out. And that's why, so if we were looking at a reroll, I'm between them. I understand the complete value of Demi Luna, and I even recommend you in the reroll guide to do Demi Luna. But if you didn't, and you ended up with Stella or an older player who has Stella, or you decide to go Chaos and you pick Stella on your own, great, cool. This could also be festival units. It could be if Gnosis Dahlia was up and you had her. It could be if some of you re-rolled and you probably got Tamamo no Mei. You could use this. It's limited in terms of what you're going to clear with it, but it is something you could do. Okay, but we're going to go from the aspect of you probably started off with one of the demi units. So I'm going to set this up the way we did it early on in the game. Okay, so we have a AoE right here. This has been changed though from where we were. So this just recently got buffed. She did not need a buff, but we'll take it because we have to at this point. We can't say, no, take this back. She didn't need a buff. There was many other units that needed it. But you've got an AoE here right away. It's also got an execute for non-boss enemies. You'll notice this in certain content where you will see the instant kill, and once they get to 2%, just bang, they're gone. Cool. This skill, you won't get to use that often on faster fights. You'll never use this. So you're basically using her for this ability and her survivability. She is a bruiser striker, so she is going to be a tanky unit, so HP is going to be valued there. Then we carried through this as a second damage dealer. We used Noah. Noah was another AoE, single target to AoE user. As long as she crits, she does the second attack. And then our go-to was Tio for the heals and the cleansing ability here for everybody else. Because again, there isn't much she's going to take, but you can get shocked and a few other things. She can have status effects. She can be burned. But yeah, she can be burned and shocked, I believe, are the two that she can be done. She can be unhealable, unbuffable, I believe. There's a few different buffs she can get. She tells you exactly what she cannot be done with, and then everything else can be put on her. So this gets off the nasty stuff that could potentially slow you down. So we wanted Tio there, and then again, starting off because it's about what you're leveling here. Now, this just gets replaced with whatever you want, honestly. So if you re-rolled and you took up Luna goes there. If you took up like Gnosis Nella, Gnosis Dahlia, something like that, festival unit, whatever, you could probably put it here. All right, so this slot's really just generic, opened up for everybody. But as far as what carried me through all of like the early game, we beat 99% of the tower. It was this, and actually it was in this order. Also, while we'll talk about the chain skills in a little bit, so do hang on for that. I will explain what all this is later at the end of the teams, because this is somewhat important when it comes to picking teams and how you set it up. But do note that we would set it up like that, but I would just want to let you know, you do want to put Stella there at the end for this specific scenario. But this is the early game team like I said, carried me through everything. Now, if we're looking for a general PvE unit and you're going to be pulling and you're looking at who should we pull for type thing, we can get a little bit crazier than this. We don't have to be revolving around all of this. But I'm going to say, for the sake of this video, I'll put Demi Luna in here now for a little bit. All right, so now you're playing a little bit. You maybe have re-rolled. You've re-rolled, obviously, a Demi Luna. So you're here. Now, how are we going to go about building this? Well, early game, you have no crit chance, so now we need crit. We have a few options for this, and they are going to be in your rangers. All right? Each ranger has their own unique way of playing, so do be cautious of this. So I will always promote the least amount of units in the beginning as possible. So obviously, my first choice here is Valentine, but if you want a general PvE unit and you want all the buffs, Scotty. Scotty is going to give you literally everything. Accuracy, effectiveness, crit chance, crit damage, and increased attack. You literally get everything with her. Now, why I don't recommend Scotty right away is just because Valentine is more important for you to get into gearing. I don't necessarily like splitting my elemental advantage if I don't have to. This could be a case where if you are running Tio and Chimera, you could put Scotty there. That is possible because you're still using the 3-in-1. But personally, and that's also why, because if you focus one element, this is why you focus it, because you get 8 chain points. So that's a big deal. So if I'm doing 3-in-1, okay, cool. But if we're talking just general PvE, Scotty gives you all the buffs, okay? But if you have to be a little more limited, Tamara is a good option because you're going to get the increased critical chance. She can debuff as well, which is a unique thing. Now, Tamara has a little more weirdness in her kit because she's got a crit for a lot of her extra stuff. So if you don't have 50% crit on her at the beginning, this gets a little bit weirder. So let's say this is a little more advanced, but it is possible, and you're also dicing the 50-50 crit anyway. But here's another reason why we like it. Attacks all enemies has a 100% chance to inflict reduced defense on all targets for 2 turns. When scoring a critical hit on 1 or more enemies, has a 100% chance to increase the skill cooldowns of all targets by 2 turns. Cool. So we can get, in this case, we can get a defense breaker as a secondary unit, which means we don't have to take a mage to do that. Also, when she crits, she can bring a dual attack. So this is why she's a little more specialized, because now you're going to have to be working with effectiveness, crit, and speed. Now, this unit, you're not going to have blazing fast. You'll have her fast, but you're not going to be screaming because you're going to have to put the stats in other places. You're going to need crit, you're going to need speed, and you're going to need effectiveness because you're going to have an effectiveness check. You got to get her fast enough to rotate around your other units, and then you have to have crit, at least 50%, so she can... with her buff, she can do all the extra mechanics of her kit. So Tamara gets a little more specialized, but she's still a good ranger to have opening up. Those would be your buffers. But as a general utility person, we take all the buffs if we're going to do that. If you're wanting to go least investment, it's Valentine here. Okay, so you kind of see what we're doing. We're trying to get you into the minimalistic idea of leveling up. Eventually, everything will be leveled up, and you'll be able to use everything here. Okay, so now, where do we go? Well, we don't really have, we have an AoE skill, but it's not constant AoE. We don't have heals, we don't have tank, okay? So let's assume we're not worried about dying, okay? Cool. So we're gonna put you here, and now, what do we have access to if we're going to be building a general PvE team, okay? Well, we have lots of free units, we have a lot of good stuff given out there. So in this case, we probably want to go something AoE, which again would be Noah. We would want to look at, you know, if you rolled a seasonal unit, go ahead and throw that in there. But there's actually many free units in here to consider that are good. It's just situationally good. So let's bring up some stuff that you guys don't normally see and show you what is possible. So Ray is an idea if you wanted to go down this route, but do know she is designed where her specialty is irregular monsters. This is more end-game content, but this is a single target skill. Also, she is more tuned for water-based stuff. So if it's a water or a healer, she has this weird mechanic, so it makes her situationally good. Attacks an enemy, a single target unit. Attacks an enemy, a single target unit. So we have 2 single target units here, but it is plausible to use this. Okay, we have another one that is situationally good. You have Rona, which has a defense break that ignores resilience. So all you have to do is just build the damage for her. Crit chance, crit damage, max health, and speed is what you'd be putting into her. So what this would allow you to do is, this gives you a defense breaker without needing it. So you could technically bring in this. Now, do note that her skills are all targets, and then all targets, 2 enemies. So this gives you some AoE and some single target, and you get the defense break there. Now, she just recently got buffed, so this is an option, again, if you're trying to build, and it's based off of what you have. Because not everybody's going to have full premium, full demiurge, full limited, stuff like that, so you want to be kind of cautious. But let's get into some other tech, you know? So what else do we have out here? You can do all sorts of things. You have, you know, if you were playing around the time of Ember, you do have a damage knight. So you could play around with Ember's kit in here. Now, Ember would probably be better suited up front because she is technically a defender. So she's going to have a reduction already to damage right there. But you also have You know, Fire Ember you could bring in. I mean, if we wanted to go down Night Alley, there is many knights down here that are absolutely great to have. Great knight to use. Great knight to use. Great knight to use. Great knight to use. Pretty interesting knight to use. So I mean, there's options. They're here. There's really not a really bad knight here. It's just how do you want to play. But in terms of like utility type stuff, you are gonna get Kappa for free at some point. This does remove all buffs from the target, which on some bosses is probably what's killing you. So here's some secret tech here, but here's the issue. Her secret tech here is if it's a non-water unit, you don't get to activate the exile, or if you kill the unit, which is going to be unlikely she does, you're not going to activate exile. So she's more designed to be used with water-based units, but exile is still a good thing, especially if you're going into water-based enemies. This is helpful, and she is tanky enough to live through some stuff. So it is a possibility, but we also told you in the reroll guide to probably pull Hilda early because she is just a good knight to have. You've got the dual attack, you've got the unaffected by stun, which is a big deal because you don't want them to be, you want them to be able to move and do their things. You have the ability to reduce buff durations. Again, that's part of the issue of what some of the stuff is killing you, is some of those buffs. So that's something to be have an advantage to. But you also have Luna, who can just straight up stop buffs with unbuffable. And that ignores the target's resilience. So all you have to do is just get the skill off first, and they're not going to buff. Plus you have a cleanse. While it's two debuffs, it's still a cleanse. It still helps. And you have a dual attack chance here. And you could actually pull up to 2 allies there on burst 3 once you get her up there eventually. So there's many options here that you could use. So this is a good option right here. Now, we have technically a 2-turn cleanse. Do we need a healer here? Probably not. We probably want to go damage. So let's look at our damage dealers and see what we're cooking with. So if we want to do something a little bit different, do we want to go the debuff route? Curse is an option. Do we want to go the limited route? This is also a debuffer, technically an option. We have Karen, another good DPS unit you can carry in. She's going to ignore defense. Oops, I'm clicking on the wrong one. You've got ignores 30% of the target's defense. Now, she is an irregular specialized unit as well for in-game stuff later on. So the extra cool stuff about her kit isn't going to be valuable to you early, but the beginning part of the skill is it's still an AoE. She has the... she can also steal buffs, which is cool. Not that you're going to realistically use that too often. Attacks to enemies. It recovers the health of the caster. So she's got a little bit of sustain in her. Now, early on for you, this can help you through some content, depending on what you're going through. Obviously, you could use Air. Laplace, you have the ability to use her. There's many great units that can fit in this slot once you get going, okay? So now let's talk about more specific content, okay? And this is why this matters. So as you get into content, you're gonna have to start learning to read. And I know reading, so terrible, it's not what you want to do, okay? Let's just take a few more minutes and we're going to explain this to you. Why reading is important. So if you come over here to something like one of these higher end towers. Now, normally you have the ability to cheese through most of it with that one team I showed you with the Stella, the Noah, Tio, and Valentine. It'll do 90% of these stages and you won't even have to read. But occasionally, there is stuff you need to read. So in this case, this does not have any immunity. So you can taunt, you can provoke, you can freeze, you can do everything there. This basically says you get to have all the fun on this tower, okay? So... but this is where it comes in, is you need to read this stuff over here might determine what you're doing, okay? So, he's got a passive effect. Increases attack every 15 or by 15% every time a caster takes a turn. Every time he moves, it's 15% attack. Recovers health of the caster every time he takes a turn. Now, K's passive reduces damage taken while Ava is alive. Recovers weakness gauge at the start of Ava's turn. Increases priority by 100% and grants additional effects when Leisha or Snow is defeated. Leisha gives him increased critical chance until inflicted with break, and Snow gives increased speed until break, okay? Now, it gets down into his normal kit. He's going to increase defense, and he's going to dual attack with the ally with the highest attack. So what does this tell you? There is some irremovable buffs here, and we have some basic buffs that we can get rid of. While the defense buff is going to be annoying, you can unbuffable here, you can steal the buff, you can invert the buff if you had the tech. There's a lot of stuff you could do here. Now this is a pretty easy example, because there's not a lot of stuff going on here. But let's go to something a little bit more challenging for you, and you'll see there's a little more here than you're expecting. So let's jump into a fight that made me mauled for a few hours. Is it him? No, it was this one. Let me double check. Yes, this fight was quite annoying. Okay, so on this, it's immune to all the good stuff. You can't stun it, you can't freeze it, you can't petrify it, you can't silence, you can't taunt it, and you can't cooldown increase it. So, you gotta face tank what it is. Now, what are we actually dealing with here? Now, Fatal actually herself is for every 10 actions, meaning it doesn't matter. This is a dual attack, it's literally action taken on there. This will happen. So, every 10 action becomes enraged. So, this takes her to her enrage. Grants an irremovable effect to the caster, increases attack and reduces damage taken for 3 turns. Enraged ultimate skill deals heavy damage to all enemies, increases damage dealt every time this attack is used. So you do not want this to go off that often. Alright, now, Scorpion Desert's form. Now, inflicts silence on fire enemies. So now it tells you you can't carry in a fire team here. Alright? When performing an action, resurrects all allies, and every time an ally performs an action, increases durations of buffs on allies by 1 turn. So anytime they have any of them have a buff, it's going to increase the buff duration. Do note that. When granted stealth, increased damage taken does not exceed 100 and does not take weakness gauge reduction. So you do not want her stealthed. And that is a buff, by the way. Stealth is a buff. Now, let's look at this. Attacks an enemy when granted stealth. Slain enemies cannot be resurrected or revived. Grants an extra turn to the caster. So, extra turn, meaning she's going to use this, and there's going to be 2 turns. Curtain of Darkness removes all debuffs from the caster. So if you have her debuffed, it's going to remove that. And grants stealth to the caster and invulnerability to all allies for 2 turns. Now, here's where this starts getting into some secret sauce. So these are removable buffs right here. Attacks an enemy and grants attack to the caster for 2 turns. Okay? But there's a little bit more to this. So if we actually go into this, we get to see what's really cooking here. And then we start seeing... Okay, they can be debuffed. They can be debuffed. These are the early ones. They can be debuffed. Okay, so what does this tell us? So she is going to have, I believe it's her and these 2 are with her when we spawn in, and then it's these 2 are the ones we kill along the way. Yeah, it's these we kill along the way. So these 2 are the ones we have at the end. Alright. So, here's how we would go about doing this, alright? So, there are many ways to think about this, and there are no real wrong answers, and I had Stream try to tell me there was a wrong answer. They tried to pull the meta card on me, and I kind of said politely, screw you, okay? Because it's about using this, and how do you want to go about fixing it. Okay, so, realistically, we had to do this the hard way, all right? So the way I beat this was with Stella, all right? So this prevented me from any sort of BS that could possibly come up. It stopped it right there. So we did use Stella. Then we brought in Tio, and we brought in Nella. Now, why we did this is Nella provides the resurrection, and we had the agile response, increased health. We had the immunity right here, so it prevented us from... actually, no, hold on. We didn't use Nella here. I'm thinking of somebody else. Because there was another one. Okay, I know which one it is now that we used Nella for. We used Tio here, and then we had, we brought in this one. This is the one that, okay. So this is the one that they said I shouldn't use. Or I shouldn't be using because you can't freeze. Correct. I did not bring her into this fight to freeze. I brought her in because of the, reduced speed, and I brought her because she removes 2 buffs. Now, what 2 buffs are going to be important to remove? We want to remove the invulnerability, and we want to remove the stealth. That's all we need out of her. And then we have the priority increases of the caster. So this also doesn't trigger any extra stuff, but the reduced speed here was also helpful to make you take more turns than the other person. So now I could freeze the backline, and I did keep the backline pretty much perma-frozen because of her. But the recommendation was actually to use the meta option, which I refused, was Alice. And why Alice is because unbuffable for 2 turns. It has the chance to remove buffs. Actually, it will go up more than that. She has a lot of good stuff in her kit, but for what I wanted, I just wanted to use the freeze for the back and the attack. So in my case, we used the normal Dahlia to get through it because I read and I understood what my kit had, and it was a leveled up unit ready to go. Actually, I leveled it up and I wasn't going to level another unit because I already knew I wanted just this is all I needed. Plus the barrier was nice when I did burst this. And the freeze, like I said, just kept the back line from moving. Realistically, all that it was. And then I'm pretty sure, actually, on this team, it was Monad Ava is what we ended up using. I went kind of toxic here. So we grabbed Monad Ava and we used her here. Monad Ava costume, by the way. But this was the team I used. Pretty sure I used here. And if I didn't, it was... this was what I ended up using. Now, there was one that we did struggle with, and it was more than that, and it was this one. Because of these 2 little gremlins right here. Now, let me tell you, this fight sucks. And we're going to explain why in just a second. So... she's not the issue, but she's part of the issue. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. We're not going to read through it. This is part of the issue, is she can permanently taunt you. This will become a permanent taunt. So this is basically, you're never getting out of that taunt. Now, she can reduce your buff durations. She can petrify you for 1 turn. Alright, keep that in mind. And she's going to dual attack with the ally with the highest attack. Like I said, she's not the issue outside of that and the taunt are kind of the 2 big things here. Alright? Now, the gremlins are totally the issue of this fight. Why? Because of this. So, you can do whatever you want to them, but they're fast as everything. That's 330 speed. You're not outspeeding them. Period. Okay? So now, attacks all enemies and inflicts burn on targets for 1 turn. Then grants increased attack to the caster. The passive, when an ally mage activates an additional attack from the enemy with the highest attack. When an ally mage attacks, activates an additional attack with the enemy with the highest attack. After attacking, increases priority. Guess who's a mage? here. Now, inflicts shock on all enemies for 2 turns, then attacks enemies, damage dealt, okay? But then, when an ally ranger attacks, activates an additional attack with the enemy with the highest attack. After attacking, increases the priority of the caster and grants increased effectiveness to all mages and rangers for 2 turns. So now what you have is you have her pulling one of these, which is now going to pull the other one. So you're having to deal with both of these little gremlins, and this is going to get really annoying to deal with. So here's how we ended up 5-heading through this. I went full toxicity, okay? Can't be petrified. Brought her. Now, I was trying to use Tamamo through this. Tamamo ended up staying dead throughout 99% of the fight, but the curse, when it did tick, really did a bunch of damage. However, there's many other options you could realistically use here. And I went full toxic butt munch, alright? We brought in Tio. Why? Because of her passive here. We brought her in because we wanted to use basic first aid. Activates agile response when an ally is inflicted with a debuff. That's what we wanted. We wanted to have that at our disposal at all times because that's going to help take those fire debuffs off of you. Plus, we have a very easy to get immunity for 1 turn here. So if somebody's low and we want to keep them alive, there's a good chance we can keep this immunity around. Plus, it keeps the cooldown of this rolling at instant 1-shot as long as we are using it. Then we have the barrier here, plus how TO was built, allowed me to get through this fight. So, then I brought Nella. Nella was the one we brought for this one. And the reason being is I needed the resurrection here. In case anybody died, we could bring them back to life. Then, also here we had activates agile response, increases priority of the caster by 70%, recovers health of all allies by 20%. So now we have agile response healing on Tio. We have agile response healing on Nella. So that's 2 agile responses we're healing up through. And then we have the thing we were using here, which was because she was 5-star when I used her, we used the heck out of this, which is changes to an enhanced attack and increases immunity to all allies. So we kept immunity up the entire fight. Now, you're not going to have access to the max one right away. So you have to look at this. This would probably change a little bit how you were using it. So for what I was doing, this kept me in the fight right here. This was 99% of the fight. Stella literally soloed the whole thing. We got Tamamo's S2 off twice. So we had the curse up a couple times. But in this case, what you could do is you could take in, if you had it built right, you could probably take in something on like a bruiser level. We tried Luna, but Luna got blistered pretty quickly. As well. I tried, I think, Gnosis Dahlia, and she got absolutely murdered. And then I just kind of gave up on the idea of trying to debuff. This could have been an option that we could have used. I didn't want to go 3 healers. I didn't want to do... I had thought about trying to do this tech, but the issue is trying to get the execute on... the little gremlins was going to be near to impossible. So that's why I didn't go bring in her for that. I didn't bring this because, honestly, the cleanse at that point and the unbuffable, while we could technically get away with it here, because she's not immune to unbuffable, and they're not immune to unbuffable, it wasn't worth, in the end, for what we were trying to do here. So it kind of felt weird to bring her. We weren't going to taunt. Could we have used the defense from this? Yes, we could have. The dual attack could have been good. But I was trying to go a little more damage because I knew these two, in terms of heals, were going to carry me. So I was looking for something tankier in my roster, and I was trying to get the Tamamos tech off, because again, I thought if I could get the curse to tick, this could really chunk the HP pretty quickly, but we never really did. So this is why it's important to read the skills, because it does determine how you set up. And also doing stupid stuff like this is why you can cheese through some stages you're not supposed to live through. Now, did I get with the 1 or fewer deaths? No. Will I go back and eventually get that? Yes, I will go through and do this legitimately, and I'll bring in somebody tank over here and do it. And I won't lose her. instantaneously. Because if not, they never died. I just needed somebody tankier. But I was stubborn. I really wanted to see the cursed ticks on him. So that was my fault. I could have changed this to whatever. Alright, so we're pretty much done. So let's do the last thing, which is talk to you about chains, and this also can influence your builds as well. So right here, you can see we've got most everything. We've got a starter exclusive, a companion, a starter exclusive, and a finisher exclusive. Now, what does this mean is if they're not in the right order, which is starter and finisher, you're not going to get the ability of this off. Now, is this something that you have to build into every time? Absolutely not. Can it influence your decisions? Yes, because in this case, did we need Tamamo? No. So, let's go back to our filter. Now, we have our filters down here. This could technically, like I said, influence your decision. We don't need starters, and we don't need finishers. What do we need? We need a companion, because a companion can go, let me just pop somebody up here. A companion can go in any slot. All right? So this is important. So a companion, doesn't matter where it's at, it's always active. So do note this. All right. So let's go back to this, and let's bring up one more companion. So in this case, let's say, you know, we were here with that, and we need something probably damage dealer. We probably want, yeah, we probably want something damage dealer here. Air, because she's single target. So now we have it set up with companion. But what you want to note here is this is a heal. This is a heal. This is an attack buff. And then this is the final attack finishing chain here, where she'll deal fixed damage. Which is huge. So now we have all four active. Now, is this what you always have to chase for? No, but in certain cases, you may need all four. And that's how you're going to go about finding them, is going down through your skill chain type and figuring out what you need. Now, is it something to say that this is good or bad? No. Do we realistically need that? No. Could we go into companions and find something else? Sure. We could do this. This will increase or decrease the... let's see here. Skill chain attack damage, and it reduces skill cooldowns of final cleanup by 1 turn, so we can reduce skill cooldowns. We have, you know, we can pop Tamara in here. Now, Tamara will do a, will apply marked to the target, which is good. Having this is another debuff, but she also could apply it to her skill, but if it falls off and it happens to be in time, boom, you get marked, 10% more damage, attack buff, fixed damage. So there are cases where you can make it. You can apply curse. Again, this is where I was thinking in the back of my mind, if I can just get that curse to go off, I could shred through HP. So skill chains are important, but it's not mandatory to have it, you know, have to have it to where you have the companions there. There have been many times where I've used stuff like this, and there's one dead one in there. They're still going to do their tech. They're just not going to apply this extra little buff. They're still going to go in. They're still going to lower the weakness gauge based off of what they say. They're still going to deal their damage. They're still going to do their main skill. It's just not going to do the additive parts to it, which is heal, or increase the CP, or increase the attack, do the fixed damage. So you do want to make sure you do this. Now, if you didn't pay attention to this, this is available in the fight. You can go in and rearrange it before you send the buff off. It is possible. So if you accidentally forgot to check this before you went in, you can do it when the chain burst comes up. Just make sure you do it on manual, the first burst on manual, and you can rearrange it and it'll be set up for the fight. You won't have to do it every single fight. So that's team building in a nutshell. There is no wrong answer here in terms of technically what you can and can't do. all units here can work together in some shape, form, or another. This isn't you have this one team and it carries you through. The only reason I want you to build a specific team in the beginning is because it maximizes the resources used. Because early on, getting the EXP is the issue. Early on, getting the skill books is an issue. While a lot of stuff is given to you for free, you don't realize how little of that you're going to get. So while you may have 100 red books sitting there, that dries up really quickly. Especially when you start cracking through unit after unit after unit, and you start building stuff you shouldn't be using, you're going to run out of that. So going through and being able to technically use anything in this roster is great. There is technically no wrong answer as long as you've read the mechanics. Because taking somebody in who deals all these debuffs to a target that literally can't be debuffed is the wrong unit there. Because at that point, it's just raw damage and their crit chance, crit damage multiplier. Are they providing anything to your team? No. Just like if you take in something that, just as let's give you an example, can't be crit, can't take strikers, can't be a mage, and it's going to reduce the damage to 0, and you put that in there. Because if you read it, then you know you can take this, you can do this. That's the key importance when it comes down to the in-game building of teams, is having the diverse roster, not having 5-6 stars on your account. Having every unit is far more valuable for you than having 3 units, 4 units at 6 star. And I mean, we've kind of been harping on this from the beginning. You don't need the duplicates, you just need the units, because the units themselves determine so much about this. All the normal units in the game, you'll eventually get 6 star. All of them. It's only the limited and the premium units are going to be the ones you're not going to get 6 star, and you don't need them. You really don't. You don't need their burst 3s, you don't need their 6 star transcendence tech, you don't need any of that. You just need the team composition, because the actual kit is what's inside of the skills here, not the additive little bit that comes from a transcendence. While it's cool and it's fun and it's neat tech, it's not going to be what determines how that unit realistically works, because the game is balanced to work with that 3 star. So you can throw just about whatever you want. If you want to go 3 healers and 1 DPS and try to cheese through it, you can. If you want to go raw damage and put 4 damage dealers in, because, as a DPS in raids, I understand that standing in the red circle means increased damage. I'm going to deal more damage if I'm standing in the fire. Logic. It's not that I'm taking health. I don't know why my health bar is dropping. I'm doing maximum damage right now. I'm not going to come out of my rotation to move 3 steps over out of the burning acid pit that I'm standing in. I'm going to do maximum damage. And that's the true thing. If you don't die if you do all the damage first. Technically not wrong. But when you're dealing with HP pools far above what you can deal in damage, then okay, you need to tank up and you need to heal some. Alright? So there is some realistic expectations. Do you need to always run with a debuffer? Nope, because sometimes the defense buff just isn't gonna, the defense break isn't gonna be there. The marked buff won't be there. The cursed won't be able to be applied. The frozen can't be used, and the silenced, whatever. It can't be done. But, general rule of thumb, most of this crap can be defense broken, so why not? Extra damage. 50% defense is like 50% more damage. Not really, but you get what I'm saying. Half the defense, more of the raw HP I get to hit. Cool. So, think about it like that when you go to build. It's really, really simple. This game's done a great job, and probably too good of a job if we're really getting down to it, at allowing you to pretty much go grab whatever. Now, my suggestions are just that. Obviously, everybody has their opinion, everybody has their thought processes and how they think about stuff, but I'm giving you my perspective to go from where a new player is thinking, where a new player account is at. I'm not worried about bringing every new meta unit in. I'm not trying to play with that. I would much rather try to tell you guys how to do it without any of the premium limited units, because realistically, that's more impressive than having the 6-star whatever premium unit or the 6-star limited unit. I think it's cooler if you can beat it without it. It shows you have more skill. It's a skill issue. Parry this, you filthy casual. But that's it. That is building teams, and hopefully this has been helpful, because the next one is about gearing 201. This is the next step. This is the point where we gotta grow up. We can't stop doing stupid stuff. This is gonna be a lot shorter than gearing 101. We're gonna help refine you into where you need to be. But remember, if you aren't there, that video has very little value to you then, other than knowledge, because then that tells you where you're going. But it's not something to go, I'm a weekend, I'm an in-game player. No. Stop. Get help. You are not an in-game player. A month into this, 6 months into this, you're probably, okay, 6 months in, you're probably getting there. 3 months in, you're probably there, depending on how and what you have on your account and what you cheese through. But as a first month player, you're not a, if you don't have 30 real days, 30 actual playing days on your account, you're not a later player. But this knowledge will help you understand what you need to do when it comes to that. So we're going to be getting into that next. These 3 videos right here really help set up for everything we're going to be talking about below. So that's it. Thank you guys so much for sitting through this. Hopefully we've been able to help guide you on your team process. This is a lot of stuff here. And it's a lot of just general information that we want to give you to understand Outerplane. Because if you understand how to build teams, none of this content is truly hard. It's just, do I have the gear? Do I have the right units? You're more likely it's not a mechanic issue. It's a, did I bring the right team comp? Did I bring the right gear issue? Is my gear good enough? Because the units themselves at 3 stars can beat all of the content in the game. All of it. Whales will tell you otherwise. People who lay into the flavor of the month, the fear of missing out, those people will overhype you into stuff like that. But everything in this game can be beat with 3-star units. That's it. So, good luck. I'm excited to see how your guys' progression goes. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up in the comments below. We'll always do what we can to help you out. Discord stream, wherever, I'll always be there to answer your questions. And if you have any other questions about team building, we need to know more specifics. Don't just ask me generic information. Does not help me understand your issue, because if you just ask me what is this team and I don't have the context for it, which happens a lot, give me the context of where you're at, and that determines that answer entirely. Really. Make sure you tell me where you're at, what you're doing, because giving you advice on just a team is not the same as giving advice on a team for X stage that has mechanics out the butt. So, seriously guys, take care, and we'll see you in the next one.